Well, tonight's news completely upends what we thought we were going to talk about tonight and what virtually everyone in Washington has believed for the last 24 hours. It's especially surprising because the Mueller team has been so very hesitant to comment on anything in public, anything about the investigation or reporting about the investigation. Fox Chief National Correspondent Ed Henry has been following all of this closely for more than a year now, and he's got some perspective for us.
Yeah, Tucker,
Ed?
I mean, you're absolutely right, because Robert Mueller has been accused by conservatives of leaking and being out to get to the president. You've heard the witch hunt claim, and his allies, some of them Democrats, have said for a long time, he doesn't comment. He doesn't weigh in. He's trying to be fair. And so for him to insert himself is extremely rare and tells you this story is 100% not true. Why is that a big deal? Well, because we had commentator after commentator come out today on other networks, and there should be accountability, as you suggested at the top. And as a reporter, I'm getting kind of angry about this because as a journalist, you said you've instructed a lot of reporters over the years, and you have. And you know, another thing we instruct reporters and colleagues and we talk about in newsrooms is you never say, if true, this is a big deal. And yet, how many times did you hear that today, Tucker? You heard it over and over again. If true, this is a big deal. If true, it could lead to impeachment. Well, if true that Ed Henry robbed a bank, he's in serious trouble. I didn't rob a bank. You don't have any evidence of it. And I think the most important part of the Robert Mueller statement is not the first line, but the second line where he talks about the idea that there's evidence collected by the special counsel's office is not true. That's significant because what every critic of the president was hanging this story on today was that it's not Michael Cohen, an admitted liar, his word against the president. It's emails, text messages, and other things in the Trump world. And now Robert Mueller is saying, I don't have those text messages, those documents. Again, we have to be careful. We have to see. We can't overcorrect the story as well. Bob Mueller's investigation is still ongoing. We'll see what he has.
I agree.
Let's not say the president's in the clear tonight, but let's not impeach him, as a whole bunch of people did over the last 24 hours. My final point on this is Axios, which is, again, supposed to be a very credible organization. They have a lot of credible people there. I was just reading, as I was listening to you and Dan Bongino, they had this all outtake a few hours ago about how what's really, really bad for the president is that Donald Trump Jr. has exposure. Because when you look at the story, and I'm looking down because I won't even read you the whole quote, but the Buzzfeed story said that Don Jr. and Ivanka and other family members had exposure. Well, if the core part of the story about there being evidence that the president directed Michael Cohen to lie is bogus, the stuff about Don Jr. and Ivanka must be bogus as well. So why do we have so many people in the media who seem to be part of some sort of a lynch mob? Let's indict Donald Trump Jr. Let's say, let's bring all these people down. How about we just wait for the facts? How about we take a deep breath and follow the facts on the story, which is what we're supposed to do as journalists?
First thing I did this morning, first thing when I woke up was called around. I woke up early, too. And I called a bunch of people I know who were sort of plugged in. I said, this story looks really bad. And if it was written about me, I'd be very concerned. And I got back word, they don't seem concerned, actually. I didn't talk to anyone at the White House, but I talked to people who did, and they said they don't seem worried at all. And I thought that either they're lying or they know something that I don't know or that it's not reflected in the story. So what's the effect, since you've been in journalism so long, both of us worked at another network 20 years ago, you've seen our business change. When Trump exits the stage at some point and all of this is over, what's left of our business, journalism?
The honest answer is I simply don't know. I mean, I think, to be fair, we should push back when the president shouts fake news and says the fake news is the enemy of the American people. And I know some people are not going to like me saying that, but as a journalist, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm going to give you a blunt, direct answer. I don't think that that's helpful. On the other hand, the critics of the president should wake up. Because the fact of the matter is, when you keep producing fake news, and it's not just Buzzfeed in the story, my broader point is all, as CNN and everyone else, who when you wake up this morning, the president's about to be impeached, if true, of course, they had that little caveat. That's just as bad as the original story, because you're supposed to have credibility. And I just simply think that people hanging it on this if true business, the more fake news you create, the more fodder you're giving that man there, the commander-in-chief, to say, you know what, you are fake news. And like I said, I'm trying to be fair, honest, fair and balanced, as we say here, and say that when the president says that, sometimes that's not fair. Sometimes it is, folks, because there are a whole bunch of people who are creating fake news. And the more you do it, the more the president's going to say it. And you know what? The less credibility, as you said, many in the mainstream media are going to have.
So you often hear people in Washington say, and no one has more contempt for the public than people who live in our city, as you well know.
Yeah.
But you often hear them say, the morons out there in the sort of great middle of the country, they believe all these conspiracy theories and they're going to all these flaky websites for their news. And I often think to myself, why do you think they're doing that? Why do you think they're tuning into alternative news channels? Because you're running stories like this.
Right.
So, why would they believe you?
Right. And, I was having lunch with a Democrat that you know today, and I was pressing on this point. I said, well, what if this Buzzfeed story is not true? And the person said something to the effect, well, but Russia, Russia, though, they impacted the election. And I said, why is it always this fallback? It becomes, if you're not winning the argument, you're not sure if the story is true, it's just this fallback on Russia, Russia, Russia. And we've talked about it many, many times. And it seems to be a convenient excuse for Democrats about why they lost the last election. Folks, it's more than 2 years ago. We're now in the middle of government shutdown. The president is talking about a crisis at the border. I was filling in for Martha tonight, and we led not with this story because it broke about halfway through the show, but we led with the fact that an American record, Tucker, as you know, has now been set. The most number of Central Americans or anyone from any background to break into America successfully. More than 300 Central American migrants. And yet we have a large number of people in the media and a large number of people in the Democratic Party saying it's a manufactured crisis. That's fake. It's not manufactured. It is a crisis. I'm not defending the president. But you know what? He's right that there's a problem at the border. Look at the photos. Don't listen to me. Don't listen to the president. Look at what's actually happening. And yet every time you talk about it, well, Russia, something happened. They threw the election. And now yet another story about that is not true. And so credibility is suffering.
Really quick, Ed, has BuzzFeed responded to the statement from the special counsel's office? Where do they go from
While
here?
I was on the air, they put out, to be fair to them, they put out a tweet that said the special counsel is now denying our report from last night. So, and then they posted what that statement is. So in fairness to them, they are, at least to me, in the early stages, look like they're being transparent about the fact that there's a dispute. But I'm not going to give them that much credit. Yes, they're being transparent now. They should have been more transparent last night about the sourcing. And also, to get back to our conversation about newsrooms, how do you publish the story? I mean, I know that the story, I'm refreshing my memory from last night about 10 p.m. Eastern. It said something about the special counsel not denying it. Maybe the special counsel didn't know they were really going with the story. I don't know all the particulars. But you got to get the facts before you publish it. It's fine to be transparent now, but they could not go with the story until they had it nailed down. And by the way, on CNN this morning, one of the two reporters was saying this is a 100% true. Look at CNN New Day's Twitter account. They still have a tweet up there with a long segment quoting the reporter from BuzzFeed saying this story is 100% true, and by extension they were suggesting this is really bad for Donald Trump. Well, you know what?
I was stuck. I listened to it, involuntarily stuck in an airport this morning. Why do they still play that crap in airports?
Don't they pay to do that?
Yeah, they pay.
I've seen that on Tucker Carlson.
It's unbelievable. Ed Henry, thank you for that perspective. Appreciate it. Well, there turned out to be, and this is the understatement of the evening, a huge issue with BuzzFeed's sourcing of this report. Though, by the way, I'm just getting word that as of this hour, BuzzFeed is saying we stand by our reporting, even though the apparent source of the reporting, the person who would know, is now denying it. Guy Benson's been watching all this. He's political editor at townhall.com and, of course, co-host of Benson and Harf. He joins us tonight. Guy, what do you make of this?
Well, Tucker, I mean, yes, this is a huge issue, I think, for BuzzFeed here tonight. I'm a little bit taken aback at this development that you just reported, that they are standing by their reporting, because if that's what they're doing, they are contradicting Robert Mueller and the special counsel's team. Are they calling them liars? Because they put out a statement very clearly. They know the cards that they hold, right? They're the special counsel's office.
Right.
They know what they do and do not know. For them to say the way this story was reported is not accurate should be case closed, I would imagine. I guess BuzzFeed probably in a bit of chaos here tonight. One more piece of this, Ronan Farrow, who is an investigative reporter at The New Yorker, he tweeted moments ago something very interesting. He said, I can't speak to BuzzFeed's sourcing, but for what it's worth, I decline to run with parts of the narrative they, meaning BuzzFeed, conveyed based on a source central to the story repeatedly disputing the idea that Trump directly issued orders of that kind meaning to lie under oath to Michael Cohen. So there's Ronan Farrow who's saying, I got wind of this, and some of my best sources were telling me, no, Trump did not do this. BuzzFeed went with it. And here's my question, Tucker, because I was listening to your conversation a moment ago with Ed Henry very carefully, and you were talking about accountability and accuracy and all of that. I would like to know at this point, who were these two sources that are quoted by BuzzFeed? Yeah. If they have been given false information and now they've got egg and mud and everything else all over their face, it would seem, I think it's now time journalistically to burn the sources. Tell us who these unidentified law enforcement sources were who gave you the information that was so apparently inaccurate that Robert Mueller and his team took the stunning step of coming out on a Friday night and putting out a denial of the story. If you're going to stand by the sources, I'm a bit mystified by that. I think we now, as the American people, have a right to know who are these people, what did they tell you, and why.
So this is an ongoing theme, and you see it very frequently in the media, which demands, as I think we should, transparency from people in power. Show us your tax returns. You know, who did you speak to? Where were you on the night of July 29th? Whatever. Sure. But then when caught making mistakes, deliberately or accidentally, refuse to account for them. So NBC leaks its own Access Hollywood tape, destroying the life of its own reporter, Billy Bush, to the Washington Post, and then won't comment on what it did. In the case of BuzzFeed, doesn't that publication have a moral obligation, Ben Smith, its editor, have a moral obligation to tell us, where did you get this? Okay, you misled us, you lied, you made a mistake. How did this happen?
Right, so that's the point. If you want to believe that the problem here is the sources, and if the sources aren't good, that obviously reflects on the outlet that ran with those sources without attribution. But if the core argument that BuzzFeed's going to make is we were told false things and ran with it, it looks bad for us, you would think they would want to hang those sources out to dry.
Exactly.
Right?
That's
if
exactly
they were that wrong, they should come out and tell us, all right, they have given up their anonymity. The quid pro quo here of not listing their names and attributing their names to those words, it's gone because of what's happened here in the Mueller statement that they put out. But as of now, it would seem that they are quasi doubling down here, and they said, stay tuned. Believe me, we will.
I just wish they'd stop calling themselves journalists. You know, run your little cat pictorials, your stupid little listicles, or whatever you're thinking up in Brooklyn, but stop calling yourselves journalists and stop playing in a world that you don't understand, which is what they're doing.
Well, Benson,
it's infuriating. It is infuriating because it really does devalue the currency that the rest of us trade in, I would say. Great to see you. The press spent almost the entire day, as you watched, reporting on BuzzFeed's false report and its implications. Impeachment, indictment, maybe a wave of indictments. Maybe everybody goes to jail. Well, it looks like not, at least for now. Ethan Bearman is a progressive radio host in California and a frequent guest on the show. He joins us tonight. So, I mean, Ethan, could this be, or let me rephrase the question and make it a statement, this is an example of people believing what they wanted to believe?
Well, I think that there was some of that. However, I want to say something right up front. It's an interesting and odd day when I agree as much with Dan Bongino as maybe even more so than Guy Benson right now, because Dan is right. We have to have some trust and faith in journalists. And there's a problem right now where journalists want to be opinion hosts, and they blur the line. Because it's exciting to share your opinion. You and I love sharing our opinions. That's what we do, right? True. And we want to base it upon facts. And it's really important that we have some faith. However, I think it's really important to parse the words of the attorney here, the special counsel. He didn't say false. Not accurate, actually, in a legal context, is very different from false. So we don't know, and in slight deference to BuzzFeed at this point, because I am deeply disappointed in this news coming out, but some slight deference to BuzzFeed, which is, hey, let's figure out what isn't accurate before we throw all of it out. Maybe there were pieces that were right. What pieces weren't. And I think it's important to understand what is wrong about it.
Look, I will say, and you make a fair point. There's a lot we don't know, and I am not going to get over my skis in speculating about what did or did not happen. I don't think Russia's the primary threat we face going forward. That's obvious. But the specifics of this case are unknown, at least to me. So you're right. We're going to find out a lot of stuff we don't know. But to have someone who would know, the special counsel, take this extraordinary step of refuting, at least to some degree, this story tells you it must have been pretty wrong. Why else would he do this? Because he's covering for Trump? Probably not, right?
Yeah, I mean, this is absolutely astounding. As I was coming in and seeing this news come across, my jaw might have been dropping open because Mueller doesn't talk. His team doesn't talk.
Exactly.
For them to come
right.
out and talk right now, yeah, this is a huge deal.
At least
but
on
I also
the record.
want to point out, we have a new...
I'm sorry, I'm being told
Tucker.
we're out of time. We blew a break. We're going to a hard break. Ethan Bearman, it's always great to see you. Thank you for that.
Thanks.